It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. It is Agronomic Monday today. Hey, and thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday, as well. A big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, today we're going to be talking to Pete Johnson. He'll be here, as well as Marty Vermey, who is the agronomist with the Grain Farmers of Ontario. Marty's going to talk about the yen, and with Pete, we're going to talk about a wide range of issues. We're going to talk about Agritechnica that is coming up next week. Our coverage is brought to you by Optimum Gly and Corteva Agrisciences. So that and a whole bunch of other things. Oh, deep tillage to break some compaction on some sandy soil. We're going to talk about some concerns on the soybean quality out in wet Nova Scotia, and get an update on some of that dawn in Ontario as well. So lots of stuff to chat about with Pete Johnson today. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find us across all the different social media platforms, or you are more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. Of course, you dial that number, you press the number 3, and you leave me a voicemail. So would love to hear from you on the feedback line. Got an email here from Corey. He was listening to us talk on Friday's show on the RealAg Issues panel about really what I'll editorialize and call a bunch of nonsense about how the Prime Minister has really created a divisive policy to provide breaks to Atlantic Canadians because he's worried about some tight races. And his popularity in Atlantic Canada has nothing to do with affordability. It has more to do with the fact that he is trying to find some votes for the next election, and is ignoring the rest of the country. And the rest of the country has got some problems with it. And I understand why. So we talked about that on Friday's show. So if you missed that, go back and listen on wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, you can get RealAg Radio on your podcast network. So Corey says, great show as always. You always cover a lot, and I'm continually amazed at how well Kelvin and Lindsay keep abreast of the issues and have in-depth knowledge about it all. I agree. They do a great job, Corey. Corey continues, I think the carbon tax pause definitely is the beginning of the end of the tax. And this was a question that we had chatted about with the panel. Megan Murdoch as well from H&K Strategies was on the panel. Corey continues, Liberals have forced their own hand by politicizing it so blatantly. To keep a pause in place for one group and not for all puts too much pressure on the Federation. Western Canada is not going to tolerate it, nor should any Canadian. So, hey, Corey, really appreciate that email. I tend to agree with you. I'm in the camp where, it's a matter of time. This is kind of the first cracks. You've said that we have to have a price in carbon. You're giving a wide scope of exemption. Plus, your own party voted against 234, which was going to give an exemption to farmers because they didn't have other choices. The selectiveness around this is really, really, I think, has so many people so frustrated, just like we heard there from Corey. Okay, if you have any thoughts on that, send me an email as well, shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll get into it with Pete Johnson. He's standing by, and we'll be right back right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
When it comes to your farm, you demand performance, because what goes in determines what comes out. At Pride Seeds, we deliver on performance. With best-in-class corn hybrid seed, you'll see results when it comes to premium yield in all the ways that matter. Moisture, nutrition, dollars per acre, and of course, tonnage. So discover your farm's advantage, the Pride Seeds advantage. Visit your local dealer or prideseeds.com today.
Let's get rolling here with Agronomic Monday. Let's bring him in. It is Peter Wee Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, thanks, Shaun. Although the weather has turned crappy again, it's been a tough harvest in Ontario so far, and it looks like it's going to be catchy again this week. We got a little bit done on Sunday, actually over the weekend, Friday, even Saturday, some places. But Sunday was a great day for a lot of growers, so that's good. There was even some sunshine on Sunday. Not a lot, but boy, when it's out, it makes Pete smile.
Yeah, kind of some gross fall weather. Like I'm looking at the Guelph forecast. It's 2 Celsius on Wednesday, 80% chance of rain, and 21K winds. That's like a beautiful fall day. Oh, goodness gracious. Needs some sunshine.
Welcome to the UK or something, right?
That's a beautiful day in Scotland. That right. Yeah, that you get out and about when it's like that in Scotland. There's no doubt about that. Anyway, it's challenges for sure. We're going to get into some of that in a little bit. This segment's brought to you by Alliance Seed and CDC Endure Oats. Top yields, excellent disease resistance, and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure is available through Alliance Seed authorized retailers. You can find out more and find that list of retailers by going to allianceseed.com. Okay, Pete, we were just talking about the weather a little bit and some of the challenges. One thing's for sure in this Ontario corn crop, the discussion around dawn, and we've been talking about this for the past 2 months, and we were concerned, and now we have some results, and it definitely is taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room when we're talking to farmers that have been rolling through those fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we knew we had a concern. The OMAFRA grain farmers survey showed us that we had a concern. We weren't sure how great that concern was going to be, but there are some definite hot spots out there. And boy, there are some real problematic hybrids, corn hybrids. And I can think of one in particular where most of the corn was coming into that elevator. It definitely had some dawn, 2 parts per million, 5, some 8, even some over that. And then you get into one particular hybrid on one particular farm, and it was sprayed, so they sprayed it, but it was 24 parts per million dawn in the samples coming in, and you just go, okay, that one's nasty. We don't want to go there again. But discount schedules are being posted now at most of the elevators. Don't forget that there's also a salvage benefit from crop insurance to offset some of those discount schedules, but yeah, it's a problem in some areas. There's no question about that. And a lot of growers, really on those problem fields, we need to get them out of the field quickly. And then we talk about the weather, and the weather is just, it's not conducive. I was combining Sunday, Shaun, and of course, Wheat Pete has to combine when Wheat Pete has time to a certain extent, because I just have many other things pulling at me. But ground conditions were less than ideal. I just hated being in the field. I have good tires on the combine. We do everything we can to avoid compaction, but it still was less than ideal. But my dawn levels, kind of anywhere from under 1 to over 3. I'm not horrible, but I can't afford to leave the corn in the field because the dawn will only get worse. So you get pushed into doing things that you'd rather not. And Mother Nature is not being very cooperative either.
Yeah, and that's the rain part of this equation, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, we ran Friday. We got started Friday, and then Friday night, we got somewhere between a third and a half of an inch. It depends on my rain gauge said a third, but my neighbor behind me said that it was half an inch. So that's the field. And you get half an inch this time of year. We couldn't run Saturday. It was just ugly. And again, we did run Sunday, but it was not pretty.
Yeah, we're all. Sorry, go ahead.
No, like as you say, more rain this week, and it just keeps the surface mucky, and it's a challenge.
Yeah. Another place that's facing some challenges, soybean harvest in Nova Scotia. You've been checking in with some farmers out there, and the weather has really impacted some of that soybean quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got sent some pictures from Nova Scotia of some soybeans, and man, Shaun, like I've seen some tough looking soybean samples, but this was some of the toughest stuff I'd ever seen, just full of phomopsis. So all that tells you is how wet they've had it since those beans were mature, because that's when phomopsis, or diaporthe is it's called as well. That's when it infects. There was also purple seed stain. There was white mold. There was, I don't know. You looked at the sample and you said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this particular sample of soybean? Roast it and feed it. It almost gets to be that's about the only thing you can do with something like that. And that, again, shows how tough the weather has been. It's been tough in Ontario as well. There was lots of soybeans came out of the field on Sunday, and some of them actually got close to being dry, but there have been growers taking soybeans out of the field at 26 and 28% moisture because the weather has been so tough here, and that's not the way you want to do soybeans.
Pete, coming out west, I wanted to ask you about something we noticed on Twitter on the weekend, and that's regarding, I think it was Scott Keller, farmer from Camrose, Alberta, was doing some pretty deep tillage on a field that where he's been doing controlled traffic farming for quite some time. Talk about the why of it and what he's doing, because there's some interesting questions about controlled traffic farming from this.
Yeah, and I love following Scott because he does cool stuff. Like, just to be a controlled traffic farmer is cool, and it shows his focus on trying to improve soil health, infiltration, avoid compaction, all of those things that we talk about. But apparently he had a farm, sand soil, and he'd done some root digs, and good for Scott, because that's when the crop isn't growing the way that you think it should, you kind of go, well, what's going on? You should dig roots. And the roots were not going down, at least the last 2 years, they were not going below 9 inches deep. And come on, canola roots should go at least 3 feet. Wheat roots should go at least 3 feet, maybe more. And at 9 inches, well, we simply aren't accessing the soil moisture that we need. And when it's dry, we're behind the 8 ball. He used a penetrometer. He said that the penetrometer was through the roof readings all the way down. And so they got an AgriPlow, and apparently AgriPlow has been in Canada before, but it's a deep ripping kind of tool. It doesn't plow, but it lifts and shatters the soil. And by the way, they wore the points out, I think in 300 acres, which tells you that sand soil that's compacted, like 300 acres, and you wear the points out, but that sand soil, it's just acted like sandpaper on those wear points, right? But 12 inches deep, he went through the tram lines, and normally in controlled traffic farming, come on, Shaun, you hit that tram line and the tractor almost stalls because they're so compacted, and it's just like, boom. No, did not even feel the tram lines. And so that kind of says how compact that sand soil was. Lots of growers out there might be thinking, wait a minute, sand soil compact? That's like sand doesn't compact, clay compacts. No, sand compacts because that's what we make roads out of. And there are some soils that are just naturally compacting. here in Ontario, we can compact sand with rain. We get some of these really heavy rainstorms, and sometimes we get compaction just from the weight of the water pounding on it. At Camrose, that's a bit more of a struggle for me that you would have that much rainfall. But anyway, it's cool. The roots weren't going more than 9 inches deep. He ran the AgriPlow 12 inches deep, and now he's going to go back to controlled traffic farming and not drive on that to recompact it. And to follow that through and say, will that solve the problem? He found the greatest compaction, if I recall correctly, between 20 and 24 inches. He couldn't get that deep to do anything about that. But it's just such a cool thought process. And we're trying to alleviate a problem. And can we actually get there? And yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. So what we need to be careful here about is we can't, like, there was compaction in the lines, but it's the fact that where we weren't driving over, that's really, really where so when the compaction in the non-lines is the same as where we're driving, that's compacted. So and the controlled traffic farming didn't, I'm making an assumption here. Nothing that was done during the CTF practices led to the compaction. That was probably prior, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or it's a naturally compacting soil.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Like that is the one thing you have to be a little bit cautious of. We just do see that. It's rare. Mostly you get good root growth and it kind of alleviates that problem. And maybe this is just compaction from 15 years ago. I have no clue. I'm not in the field and I don't know the history. But if you don't feel those tram lines, exactly what you said, Shaun, if you don't feel those tram lines, that is one compacted soil.
Oh, man. I think that's like one of those unknowns. People not knowing, or, if you're not farming sand, you probably make the assumption that sand doesn't compact. But that's just not the case, as you indicated. Hey, Pete, we got to take a break. We've got more coming up here on Agronomic Monday. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio, 147, Sirius XM.
If I asked you, what's the most important tool on your farm? You'd probably think of tractors, trucks, and implements first. But it's actually something much bigger than that. Your soil is the most important equipment you own. The real question is, are you doing enough to keep it running at peak performance? Nutrien Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST is engineered with patented micronized sulfur technology to refuel your soil for maximum yields. Learn how to tune up your soil at smartnutritionmst.com.
Before you get back in the field this year, spend some time with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Get all the information you need on hybrid selection, planting depth, crop inputs, and more from a wide range of industry experts. A massive library of video content is available on demand when you need it most. Spend your time outside of the field, inside the classroom, with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
Shaun Haney here, host of RealAg Radio, joined by Peter Wheat Pete Johnson, host of Wheat Pete's Word podcast, where a new episode drops every Wednesday, I should say. You can get Wheat Pete's Word wherever you get your podcast. Pete, are you excited about conference season coming up this winter?
100%. Like, I'm always excited about conference season. We're in the planning stages for the Ontario Ag Conference. I love that one. We're going to 66 sessions when we're all done. You just go, wow, and all going to be recorded. And so many other conferences out there. I can't name them all. Like here in Ontario, you could fill your winter pretty much with going to a meeting or a conference every day. And that wouldn't include the ones in Western Canada or Eastern Canada or in the U.S., right? So So much to learn, man. So much to learn.
Tell me about it. I'm going to be speaking at the Ontario Ag Conference this year. Looking forward to that. But also, we're going to be at Grow Canada. It's happening in Calgary from November 28th through the 30th. The world needs more of what Canada grows. Join agriculture industry leaders from across the country at Grow Canada this year. Visit growcanadaconference.ca to register, check out the agenda, and learn more. And I'm looking forward to it, Pete. I'm going to be hosting a panel discussion. And I met with the panel last week, and we've got somebody there from Microsoft. We've got somebody there from John Deere. We've also got Shane Thomas, who is he is so up to speed on what is happening in the world of technology and some of the latest in innovation. So it's going to be a great panel. I am really looking forward to it. So make sure you check it out. growcanadaconference.ca. This year it is in Calgary. Pete, now you've got to play. I want to hit on this before I forget. You every year, kind of this time, you get your acting skills on, and you're participating in a play. What character are you playing this year?
Oh, so Shaun, this is so much fun. This is my comic relief. Like, agriculture can swallow you whole, and I love agriculture, but you really need some other, I don't know, some other input into your life. Like,
yeah, like a relief valve.
Processes.
A relief valve.
100%. And I do community theater, and so I'm back with Thistle Theater. We open a week this Friday. The play is called The Last Resort by Norm Foster. It is a musical comedy. Leslie Arden wrote the music. Anybody who knows her knows that, like, the music is so much fun, but it's so hard to sing because we get into these multi-layered harmonies. And Shaun, just for everybody listening out there, Pete doesn't sing.
Well,
like,
I was
Pete
wondering
is not
this.
A singer.
Okay, I was going to say, like, I didn't know you sang.
Pete doesn't sing, but he sings in musicals. This will be musical number 4 for me.
Oh, goodness.
And it's just fun. I'm not saying I'm a good singer, but the one thing about singing is if you're going to do it, you got to own it. And if you think about my personality, Shaun, you think I could own singing even if I'm not a good singer?
Pete, the only time I'm singing is if I'm maybe 12 beer deep in a karaoke bar, and that I am not getting on stage. I am a horrible singer. Horrible.
Well, so am I, but I own it, man. I just get up there and sing. And so you ask what character, I'm Freda. And I'm not going to say anymore because I'm not going to give it away, but I am the proprietor of The Last Resort. And yeah, it's a hilarious show. So anybody who's in the Embro area and can spare a couple hours, come on out to Thistle Theater in Embro next weekend and the following weekend. As I said, we open a week Friday, we run that weekend and the following weekend. And it's just a bunch of fun. It's a bunch of stress because you can't go on stage and not have a little stress, but it's fun. The actors are great. The crew is great. Like everybody, the director, and it's funny. You get into community theater, you put on a play, and the people in that play become family. Like you become a family. And for that time frame, it's like having another family that you care about and you work with, and you're just trying to make a good production happen.
So when you were combining this weekend, you're sitting in that cab all by yourself. Were you working on your singing? Do you sing in the tractor, Pete?
When I'm in a musical theater production and I have 2 spare minutes, I am singing a song because I need all the practice I can get.
It would be a really funny YouTube series to set up like hidden cameras during harvest in farmers' combines and catch people singing along to the radio. That would be just pure gold.
I love it. That man, Shaun, you could do that and post it on RealAg, and that it'd be RealAg comedy or something like that. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You might find a few farmers who can really sing. I can think of a few farmers I know of like Ken Nixon in a barbershop quartet. Boy, that guy can sing.
Well, but you get the other side of it though too, Pete. You get the other side, which was that person can't sing.
yeah. Well, just come to my show and you'll find out he can't sing, but he's still singing.
It's like the best part about the old days of American Idol was not watch. I didn't whatever on the good singers. I liked watching the train wrecks. That's what I like to watch. Hey, Pete, on Thursday, I'm not going to be here next week. You're going to be stuck with Lindsay. She'll be hosting the show next week. I'm going to be in Germany at Agritechnica. Yeah, that's right. We've got a Real Agriculture team headed over to Hanover, Germany. The show hasn't happened since 2019. Looking forward to it. It's the world's largest farm show. There is nothing even close. And it's going to be spectacular. And of course, our coverage of Agritechnica is brought to you by Corteva AgriSciences and, of course, Optimum Gly. If you are booking your canola hybrids this fall, make sure you ask about Optimum Gly. Pete, I know that you're kind of following some of the things that are going to be showcased over there this year. What's kind of a technology that you think I should spend some time really trying to dive into where we're at with it?
So, Shaun, it's not rocket science, but this artificial intelligence and how it's changing all of society, but it has such implications for agriculture as well, right from, identifying a weed in the field and some of that spray technology where we can go green on green. And we had an agronomist session on that not that long ago, and Tom Wolf was there, and he said that the speed at which that technology is improving and how good it is phenomenal. And it's not just there. I see now that there's some really great software out that will help you take a yield map. And I've been combining corn and when you put the header down and you first pull into the field, it's always red for that first little bit because it takes time for the outside rows to get to the center, get to the impact sensor in that yield monitor. Well, you got to clean that out because those numbers just aren't correct. And that takes time, but they're through artificial intelligence. We're getting some amazing software that can look at that. And then we can start looking at more zones in the field using some of technology from that perspective. So at the end of the day, there's so many different technologies out there that are cool, but artificial intelligence and robotics, those are the two technologies that I think will have the biggest impact on agriculture in the next few years. So that's where I'd sort of focus on if I were you.
Yeah. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, and there probably will be a time where the AI assists with the garbage in piece of this equation. But I was using some AI tools on the weekend, and garbage in, garbage out. You really do need to make sure if you are going to maximize some of these tools, you have good data going into it, because if you don't, it just knows what's in front of it, right? And it can really lead you astray in your decision making. You're like, oh well, hey, this AI tool said to do this, and here's what the output was. And it could be totally wrong based on what the input was at the very beginning. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%. And this is one of the greatest, I think, concerns about artificial intelligence, not just in agriculture, but definitely in agriculture, because I can create an algorithm. And I mean, artificial intelligence just creates algorithms. And because it can recreate those algorithms itself without me or the computer human having to weigh in, is that right or wrong? Boy, it can go south really quickly if it suddenly gets a bit of bad information at the start. And so we still have to be very vigilant on that, where that technology takes us. But when it's done well, it will really help. It's just, you got to be smart enough to know when it's wrong. And that if it's got a bit of misinformation at the start, I think that's a real problem. No question about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example, and this is not an agriculture example. I used an AI tool to summarize an hour-long meeting that I had last week. And so it was going to, I used a tool to basically create, summarize the notes. And what had happened was it output and said like, okay, speaker number 3 said these things. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I said those things. And it totally had screwed up on who said what. So there's an example of just how easily that can sort of happen. Hey, Pete, quickly, I know you wanted to hit on the fines related to the DON levels on this year's corn crop in Ontario. Just a reminder there. Go for it.
Yeah, well, so what we're really seeing, and there's been a bunch of dryers. So if growers are just starting harvest and they have on-farm dryers, for goodness sakes, pay attention. If you have higher DON levels, those kernels don't have the same level of integrity. Once you get that jib in the kernel integrity disappears and you get tons more fines. And I've talked to 3 different growers who have had all sorts of problems with their dryers, even to the point where one lit on fire because there's so many fines that sometimes it plugs up the columns, particularly if there's a bunch of fines in your combining corn that's over 30% moisture because you're trying to not let that DON level increase in the corn. So just pay attention, leave the fines in the field if you can at all. If it's a really high DON, some growers are going to the point of just leaving the return elevator open, just letting it drop on the ground. And you might lose a little bit of yield, but you keep those fines from going in the bin. And remember, you fill the wet bin, the first lot that you take out of that wet bin, you're like coring the bin, and that's where the majority of the fines sit. So that first time you pull out of the wet bin to fill the dryer, if that's the type of system you have, you just gotta pay attention. But just one other quick note, Shaun. Big yields out there. Boy, there are some big yields. I think I have a grower, a client, who may have a farm, like a whole farm, 150 acres or whatever that farm is, that might break 300 bushels per acre.
Whoa.
So where it's good, where it's good, it's good. And it's not good everywhere, but where it's good, there is some good corn. Even
with, what has happened to corn prices, in the past 6 months, you're getting 300 bushels an acre. That's a good year. Wow. That's amazing.
That's like that's like Iowa corn yields, man. Like that is, we thought it was a big deal when we got a plot that broke 300. It looks like this field may break 300. That is impressive.
You taking responsibility for that?
I wish I could. It's a sweet piece of dirt. It just is. He's a great grower. He's got great dirt. He does everything right. What can I say?
Yeah, that's awesome. I like to hear those kind of stories. Okay, Pete, have yourself a great week, and we'll check in with you again next week.
No, you won't. You'll be in Agritechnica, but have fun, and I will chat with Lindsay next week.
Yes, well, the show will check in with you next week is kind of what I meant. So yeah, well, I'll be on the show next week providing some updates from what we've seen each day at Agritechnica. So that'll be a lot of fun. So check that out on next week's show. And of course, our coverage of Agritechnica is brought to you by Corteva Agrisciences and Optimum Glide. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Are you concerned about the continuing rise of input costs and your increasing risk to plant a crop? My name's Paul Sinkovich, President at Vantage Ag. We believe that the days of placing all of your fertilizer needs at seeding time and hoping for a crop are behind us. Join us at AgriChariot in Red Deer, November 9th, as we are hosting an information meeting to showcase how our new nano-liquid fertilizer technology will reduce your risk. Call 778-919-3370 to reserve your seat today.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts, available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
Seeking professional advice for your farm and business? MMP's team of agriculture specialists cover it all, from business planning and tax guidance to financial projections, farm succession, and risk management. Visit mmp.ca to connect with the experts today. Okay, you've heard us talk previously on the show about YEN, the Yield Enhancement Network. There are several of them, mainly on the eastern side of the country as well into the northeastern United States. Very, very cool. And here to talk about the YEN in Ontario, Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture had a chat with Marty Vermey. He is the agronomist with the Grain Farmers of Ontario.
All right, and now to talk about the Yield Enhancement Network is Marty Vermey. He's with the Grain Farmers of Ontario. He's a senior agronomist. Hello, Marty.
Hi, Lindsay. How you doing?
I'm doing well. This is an exciting time to dig into all the winners and all these sorts of things. But for those who don't know, what is the Great Lakes YEN?
Well, I often wonder, what does YEN stand for? Yield Enhancement Network. And it is actually, that's what it is. It's trying to get a network of farmers together to understand what is the components of their yield, what's making up their yield, and what splits this all apart. A lot of farmers think, hey, it's just about the highest yield, or you know what, I don't have the land capacity to do that. My sandy soil does not yield that much. But still, everybody makes up a different component, and everybody kind of compares themselves as a benchmark. So it's a great opportunity for farmers to see how they can improve upon themselves, and then benchmark them against others. Because, yeah, there is one component that is, what can you achieve as a yield, but also, what is your potential of your yield? What can you achieve as the percent of your potential? So there is a crop model that actually analyzes your environment for that year and says, hey, based on all these details of your environment, solar radiation, rainfall, your soil type with your water holding capacity, all those things go into a calculation that then says, this is your yield potential. And this year, guess what? Can you guess what happened this year, Lindsay?
Was it a great year, or was it a not so great year?
Well, the calculations said that we were moisture stressed, and it was pretty dry in June. And everybody said that, and we all thought we were going to have lower yields. But guess what? The model wasn't 100% accurate. The model was saying we're going to have lower yields, but in fact, farmers achieved a lot higher percentage of their potential. Because you know what we're figuring out? We're thinking that roots go a lot deeper than the models think they do, so there's a lot more water holding capacity. So we've been learning great things like that with the yield this past year, because it's a different environment than it was last year. We've been doing the YEN for about 3 years now, and every year it's a new learning. Mm-hmm. And we just keep learning one year after another and building upon this database. And it takes a lot of data to really see where we can go with this. And I think the farmers that have been in the project for a couple of years have been tweaking things and been improving. And one thing is pretty interesting is that we've achieved higher yields every year, and also farmers have been achieving a higher percent potential of their yield as well. So this year, I believe the average potential yield was 169 based on the calculation. Mm-hmm. And farmers achieved about 70.86%, which I believe the last 2 years was down in 52 to 54%. Wow. So we've really changed that. This year was way different.
So, and that's, I think, one of the fascinating things about this is that it's exactly that. If my theoretical yield was 100 bushels an acre and I hit 99, I win, let's say, for achieving as close to possible as potential. So it's, yes, there is here's the absolute highest yield, but there is this other component of achieving the potential, because that's what's so important about this. And you mentioned the data points. Of course, there's many farmers involved in this. There's a pretty big component to, plant counts and head counts and ongoing testing that happens during the year. How has that been for farmers? Have you got any feedback or pushback on how much data they have to collect in a season?
I would say they get support as well. So they have agronomists they work with, and I think that's one nice thing about this project. It's not just the farmers doing everything themselves, because some of them are pretty busy during that time of year when some of the data has to be collected. So we require a soil sample, 2 leaf tissue sample analysis, so one right before it starts to elongate at growth stage 31 and one at growth stage 39, which is a flag leaf. We need those to actually do a lot of comparisons with the nutrient component, which I think is this year's report is going to be a little bit better than last year, and farmers are going to see kind of their nutrient balance, which is awesome to know what's in your soil, what's in your plants, what your plants removing from nitrogen to phosphorus, potassium, and a lot of other elements. A lot of farmers are really going to see some of the differences in how much is actually the crop needs to grow such an abundant crop like they've had this past year.
Mm-hmm. Now, it is the Great Lakes Yen. This is a cross-border initiative. So tell me who's all involved in putting this yield enhancement network together.
Yeah, it wouldn't be without, the partners that we have in this project. And so, the partners with Ontario, which is the University of Guelph, with OMAFRA and GFO kind of working together with the farmers. And I think it's really important to have a farmer organization working with both university and government extension. So having Joanna Fallings and Dr. Josh Nizowski with us is really important in Ontario to really help move this project along and give us kind of a basis in Ontario. But it's also our partners across the border. So in the U.S. side of the business, Michigan State University with Dennis Pennington, who's the serial extension specialist, is really important to this project, a key driver on this project as well as the Michigan Wheat Program, which is the equivalent to GFO for the wheat in Michigan. And it's those farmers and the board of directors of that organization that help drive this project forward. We also have a lot of participation with, other farmers from other states, but those are the principal partners that are helping drive this project.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned, that the pulling samples and learning about the nutrient levels needed or what the soil provides and that sort of nuance. There is a lot of data collected. Obviously, for this year, I'm not going to ask you details yet because there's a lot of number crunching yet to do. But what does happen with all this data year over year and each year going forward?
So we do have a database that is highly secure, and we make sure that there's no access because having things encrypted and making sure that the safety is there for the data is very important for farmers, for private information as well. But with this data, we're just going to build year after year and learn a lot more. And not only the nutrient levels, but we also, I forgot to mention, we're also taking the biomass, so the entire stalk of the plant, the head, the grain, and we're actually measuring all the biomass that's there. And that's something interesting that's popping up, too, in the data, is that large biomass is reflecting to higher yields, which makes a lot of sense because if you think about, typically, it's a 50-50 ratio between grain and the stem of the plant. So the bigger the biomass, the bigger the plant, the higher the yield. So we're proving that with the data, which is like the first step. Now we're finding other correlations with the data, and that's with a larger data set, we can start digging into some of the finer details because maybe not everybody has, certain nutrient levels like boron or something that's really low, but we can find out over time the changes that occur and what are critical levels. And I think that's one of the best things about this project is that we're going to learn more about the Great Lakes Basin, and we can get kind of geography specific as well. What are some of the limiting limitations, and how can we change our practices to improve our overall wheat yield? That's really the goal of the whole project, is to make us all better wheat producers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And certainly, when we see some of the results of this, I mean, it is pretty incredible what farmers are achieving as well. And as you mentioned, growth year over year in some of this. Do you foresee a time where we hit the 100% of yield potential often?
I think the way the potential works in dry years when there's more stress and the way the crop model works, we'll probably hit over that 100%. And the UK has proven that too. They did the same thing. We talked to ADAS, who of course developed this project, and we're working with them on it and got a lot of hints and direction from them as well. And it's great having that relationship with people in the UK who've been growing wheat and been doing the Yen project for quite a few years. But they've hit over 100% yield potential, and it's really, it's how the numbers all kind of come together. We can take that. I think every year is going to be different. So, this year our potential for all participants was 70. and on average. And so we did have some people go over 100. But last year, we were more like the average was, 54. So a lot of people were under 100. And I think our highest was, was it 88? I have to double check my numbers, but I think it was kind of in that ballpark. So every environment every year is going to be a little bit different as far as how much we can reach our potential. But I think it's that benchmarking every year, and that we can see where we sit with everybody else. The actual numbers, not the important thing, but kind of where we rank and how we achieve our best on our farm.
Absolutely. Now, last question: how competitive are the farmers? Are we getting some throwdowns here year over year as we do this?
We have some neck and neck. They're like neck and neck. Like, these farmers are competitive, and there's a lot of farmers in that upper area, and all that makes the difference is one rainfall or one timing application that was wrong that'll really adjust your yields or your potentials, and it really changes quickly. So it's a coin toss to see who's actually winning each year. But there's a few people that are always kind of near the top because they're very precise at what they do. The precision on the farm as far as, timing of application when they do it. Everybody asks, what's a silver bullet? What's the one thing I need to do? It's not one thing. There's multiple things you need to do to be up at that level.
Yeah, the one thing is maybe join Yen. There you go. That's the one thing.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much, Marty, for joining me. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing all this data sort of get chewed through and see what it brings sometime Hopefully in maybe January. Let's say.
That's right.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks
Great talking with you.
You too.
Bye.
That was Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture, of course, chatting with Marty Vermey, agronomist with the Grain Farmers of Ontario. If you do have questions about the Yen network, please reach out, Haney at realagriculture.com. Hopefully, at some point, we can get something like the Yen going in parts of Western Canada. I think that would be awesome. That would be really, really cool. So hopefully that's something that does develop in the future. Okay, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we are going to get to the top ag news stories of the day. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
As a grower, you spend a lot of time focused on the details. And sometimes it's only after harvest that you can step back and see the bigger picture. At AGI, we spend a lot of time focused on details too, making sure you can store your grain how you need to and move it when you need to. Learn more at aggrowth.com.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Peak, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Let's get into the top ag news stories of the day. Co-ops Grown with Purpose recognizes how your farm brings sustainability, agronomics, and safety to our food community and environment. What you do matters. Make it count. Contact your local co-op Grow team member to learn more. Okay, as I said, let's get into the top ag news stories of the day. First up, there's a bunch we got to get through really quick here. Up first is the Bank of Canada seen starting to cut interest rates in April, according to a new survey. Canadian market participants expect the Bank of Canada to start cutting its key policy rate from a 22-year high of 5% in April of 2024, a month later than the previous forecast, according to a survey released by the central bank on Monday. This story in the Globe and Mail. The survey showed a median of 27 financial participants expect interest rates to drop to 4% in the fourth quarter of 2024, up from an expectation of 3.5% in the previous survey in July. There's actually a big shout to the Globe and Mail. There's a fantastic story in the Globe today in plain English. You don't need to be an economist to understand it, talking about why the economy in Canada is struggling while the U.S. is doing quite well, relatively speaking. Okay? I encourage you to go check it out. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow on the show. The Prime Minister has made a decision to grant a 3-year carbon tax exemption for heating oil is meant to provide targeted relief to rural and low-income households, according to the story on the Globe. The country's energy minister told Reuters, while defending the overall need for carbon pricing to meet the climate goals. So, of course, Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson is defending this carve-out and basically saying there won't be any other carve-outs to happen. So critics have argued that Trudeau's surprise move last month will dilute the government's signature climate policy since 2019, which survived a challenge by right-leaning provincial premiers in Canada's Supreme Court. And look what's happening in Saskatchewan. Premier Moe, he's going to pass legislation where basically Sask Energy will not be collecting the carbon tax. This fight is just beginning again because of the government's own policy. It's interesting. And we've seen numerous ministers now very adamant there will be no other carve-outs. And according to the official data, only about 3% of Canadians use heating oil, with most of them concentrated in the Atlantic coast, where Liberals have a strong contingent of parliamentarians. And some of those are very, very tight races. British cheese companies are ramping up pressure on the UK government to reach a deal with Canada before they lose preferential market access in the Canadian market on December 31st. This story is at RealAgriculture.com. Great website, by the way. With the deadline looming, the cheese import issue has been linked with Canada's long-standing quest for increased beef market access into the UK. According to a November 2nd article in the London-based Financial Times, British trade experts say Canada may be unwilling to reciprocate on allowing cheese imports unless the UK opens up its market to Canadian beef. This has been the big gripe, contentious issue from Canadian beef exporters saying, sure, we have access into the UK for beef exports, but try getting it in there. It's sort of similar to what the U.S. and New Zealand are saying when it comes to their access they negotiated when it comes to dairy. Yeah, we have access, but we can't get it in there, or there's barriers in place. On another export story, I guess, with a little bit better tones to it, sales of maple syrup are really going up. And where? Into Germany. It's a very fashionable product, according to the story. It's a younger target group. It's mostly female as well, which is really interesting. Last year, Canada exported $61 million worth of maple syrup and maple sugar to Germany, a doubling since 2015 in nominal terms, while Germany lags well behind the United States, which imported $381 million of the sweet, sticky stuff in 2022. It is Canada's number 2 export market. Canada sends more maple syrup to Germany than any other food or agricultural product. There's a good trivia question. Who would have guessed that? What is our main agricultural export to Germany? I would not have had... my top 5 wouldn't have been guessing maple syrup. Shipping issues. Yeah, remember when we couldn't find a container anywhere? Well, container shipping lines, including AP, Moeller, Maersk, are facing significant challenges. The story in the Wall Street Journal, with a sharp decline in profits and need to cut more than 10,000 jobs. The company's profits have plummeted from $8.88 billion to $521 million, and its core Maersk Line container revenue has fallen by 56% compared to the previous year. Whew, tongue twister. The most concerning signal is that the ocean division has posted a loss for the first time in several years. Wall Street Journal report says these challenges go beyond the typical cyclical trends in the shipping industry. So, yeah, things not good on that front. And Virgin Atlantic gets UK approval for 100% sustainable aviation fuel in transatlantic flight. Virgin Atlantic received approval from the UK government for a transatlantic flight from London to New York, scheduled for November 28th. Good news for SAF. Absolutely. That's good news there for canola and soybean growers. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Haney at RealAgriculture.com. Thanks so much, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.